What happens when a ruthless HOA president declares war on a stubborn farmer who refuses to bow to her rules? Lies, sabotage, and an all-out battle for freedom. Will Ethan Walker lose everything, or will he take down the HOA once and for all? Watch the full story to find out, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories. The spark that ignited the war Ethan Walker had lived on. Walker farms his entire life. His grandfather had built the red barn with his bare hands, his father had expanded the pastures, and now Ethan was keeping the legacy alive. To him, the farm wasn't just a piece of land, it was his family's history, his freedom, his way of life. Every morning he woke up before sunrise, greeted by the crisp country air, the soft golden light spilling over the fields, and the distant crowing of his rooster, Buck. He'd grab a hot cup of coffee, step onto his porch, and take a deep breath, soaking in the peace and quiet of rural living. That peace was about to be shattered. Just a few years ago, his farm had been surrounded by nothing but rolling fields and open skies. But then, the Crestwood Estates Homeowners Association, HOA, had built a sprawling suburban development right next to his property. The homes were identical two-story boxes, painted in the same shades of beige, with the same neatly trimmed hedges, the same white fences, the same overpriced mailboxes. Everything about it screamed cookie-cutter conformity. Ethan had mostly ignored his new neighbors, and they had ignored him, until Melissa Carter showed up. Melissa Carter was the self-appointed queen of the HOA, a woman who believed that power was measured by how many rules she could enforce. She had perfectly coiffed blonde hair, a wardrobe of stiff beige pantsuits, and a clipboard that she wielded like a judge's gavel. To her, rules weren't just guidelines, they were law. And when she saw Ethan's farm, with its rustic red barn, its dirt driveway, and its unruly animals, she decided that it didn't belong next to her pristine, suburban utopia. Ethan was in the middle of fixing a fence when he saw her pull up in a spotless black SUV, stepping out with the posture of someone who had never taken no for an answer. She strode toward his porch with military precision, clipboard clutched to her chest. Ethan, already knowing this wasn't going to be a friendly visit, wiped his hands on a rag, took a slow sip of his coffee, and leaned against the porch railing. "Can I help you?" he asked, feigning casual indifference. Melissa offered him a tight-lipped smile. "Mr. Walker, I presume?" "That's me. I'm Melissa Carter, president of the Crestwood Estates Homeowners Association. I'd like to have a word about your property." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Didn't know my farm was part of Crestwood Estates." "Well, technically it isn't," she admitted, "but it is within visual range of our community, and that affects our property values." Ethan nearly laughed. "My farm has been here for nearly 100 years. Your neighborhood's been here for, what, 5? Melissa didn't flinch. "Be that as it may, we have a certain aesthetic to maintain. We've received multiple complaints about your operations." Ethan set his coffee down. "Operations?" "Yes, the noise, the smell, the general visual impact on the neighborhood." She wrinkled her nose as if the mere thought of a farm offended her. "Your barn, for example," she continued. "A bright red structure like that is rather intrusive. Perhaps you could repaint it to a more neutral color? Or better yet, consider downsizing. And then there's the matter of your rooster. Some of our residents have reported being woken up before sunrise." Ethan stared at her, trying to decide if she was joking. The barn had stood for 6 decades, its red paint a staple of classic American farm life. As for Buck the rooster, that was nature doing what nature does. "Let me get this straight," he said slowly, rubbing his chin. "You want me to change the color of my barn and somehow convince my rooster to hit a snooze button because your residents don't like the sound of the countryside?" Melissa gave a tight smile, though irritation flickered in her eyes. "Mr. Walker, I understand that change can be difficult, but this is really in everyone's best interest. I'd hate for this to become a more complicated issue." There it was, the thinly veiled threat. Ethan stretched, standing up to his full height. "Well, Miss Carter, I appreciate your concern, but my farm isn't part of your HOA. I don't answer to your rules. And as far as I can tell, my land, My barn and my animals aren't hurting anyone. Melissa's smile vanished. Her lips pressed into a thin line. We'll see about that, she said coldly, before turning on her heel and marching back to her SUV. Ethan watched her go, shaking his head. He'd dealt with stubborn bulls and angry coyotes before, but something told him Melissa Carter was going to be a whole different kind of problem. That night, as Ethan sat on his porch, he thought about the conversation. He figured Melissa would probably send a few letters, maybe call the county with some petty complaints, but she'd eventually move on to terrorizing someone else in her neighborhood. He was dead wrong. The war had just begun. The hidden war. Ethan Walker knew Melissa Carter wasn't going to back down easily, but he still underestimated just how far she was willing to go. The morning after their first encounter, Ethan went to check his mailbox and found a thick, official-looking envelope stamped with the Crestwood Estates HOA logo. These people don't give up, do they? He muttered as he tore it open. Inside was a list of violations that, according to Melissa, Ethan's farm was committing. Unapproved exterior color. Your red barn is an eyesore and does not align with community aesthetics. Excessive noise pollution. Your rooster crows before 8 a.m., disturbing residents. Unauthorized livestock. Goats, cows, and chickens are not permitted within Crestwood community guidelines. Failure to maintain lawn. Overgrown fields negatively impact property values. At the bottom of the letter, in bold, were the words, "You have 7 days to comply, or legal action will be taken." Ethan stared at it for a moment. Then he burst out laughing. They had no legal power over him. His farm wasn't part of their HOA. They couldn't dictate a damn thing. So instead of responding, he tacked the letter onto his fridge like a trophy and went about his day. The first strike. Ethan soon realized that Melissa wasn't just throwing empty threats. Within days, county inspectors started showing up unannounced. First it was the health department, then the zoning commission, then animal welfare services. Each time, Ethan greeted them with a raised eyebrow and a casual, "What violation this time?" Each time, the officials left empty-handed, shaking their heads. One county inspector, a gruff old man named Roger, sighed as he closed his clipboard. "I don't know who you pissed off, son, but they're sending us on a wild goose chase. This is the cleanest farm I've seen all month." "Wouldn't happen to be a certain HOA president making all these calls, would it?" Ethan asked, smirking. Roger let out a tired grunt. "Off the record? Her name's on every complaint." Ethan clenched his jaw. Melissa wasn't going to play fair, and if she wanted a fight, he was damn sure going to give her one. The war gets dirty things escalated quickly. One evening, as Ethan was repairing a fence along the property line, he heard a loud chainsaw roar to life. His gut twisted. That sound wasn't coming from his land. He dropped his tools and strode toward the noise, his boots kicking up dust. What he saw made his blood boil. A crew of workers was erecting a tall, ugly steel gray fence on his property, and standing there, arms crossed, looking smug as ever, Melissa Carter. Ethan stormed over. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Melissa turned, her expression a perfect blend of fake surprise and smug authority. "Oh, Mr. Walker, we're just implementing a community improvement project. This privacy fence will help maintain the visual harmony of Crestwood Estates." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "This fence is on my land." Melissa didn't blink. "That's debatable. We reviewed older survey maps, and we believe the property lines were drawn incorrectly. Until we receive further clarification, we're proceeding with this improvement." She was trying to steal his land. Ethan took a slow step forward, locking eyes with the workers. "You boys got a permit for this?" One of the workers hesitated. "HOA told us they had all the legal permissions." Ethan smirked. "They don't. And if you don't pack up and leave in the next 5 minutes, you'll be trespassing, which means I'll be calling the sheriff." The workers exchanged nervous glances. One of them immediately shut off the chainsaw. They weren't about to go to jail for Melissa Carter. Melissa's face twisted in frustration. "You can't just order them to leave," she snapped. "This is a community decision." Ethan pulled out his phone and, in full view of everyone, started dialing the sheriff's number. "Then let's make it official and have the county sort it out." Melissa paled. "There's no need for that," she said stiffly. Ethan crossed his arms. Then you'd best tell your people to pack it up. With a murderous glare, Melissa signaled for the workers to leave. Ethan had won this round, but he knew she wasn't done. The HOA hits back hard. A few days later, Ethan woke up to find a massive for sale sign planted right at the edge of his property. It read, "Under negotiation, coming soon to Crestwood Estates." Ethan ripped it out of the ground. Before he could even call the HOA office, Melissa herself showed up. This time she was smiling. "Oh, good morning, Mr. Walker," she chirped. "I see you've noticed the sign. There's been a bit of a misunderstanding, I'm sure." Ethan folded his arms. "Tell me." Melissa's eyes gleamed. "The HOA has been in discussions about acquiring nearby properties for future expansion. Some realtors assumed your farm was included, and the sign was placed prematurely." Ethan stared at her. "You're telling me some real estate agency just accidentally put a for sale sign on my land?" Melissa's smile faltered. "Well, perhaps there was some enthusiasm about the prospect." Ethan stepped forward, voice dangerously low. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call whoever put this sign up and tell them to never set foot on my property again. Because if I see another one, I won't just be tearing it down. I'll be suing the entire HOA for fraud." Melissa gritted her teeth. "Mr. Walker, let's not be hasty." Ethan pulled out his phone. "I can also get the county involved if you'd like." Melissa's lips pressed into a thin line. With an angry huff, she spun on her heel and stormed off. Ethan watched her go, shaking his head. She wasn't done, and neither was he. The final battle. Ethan Walker knew Melissa Carter wasn't done with him yet. He had seen the kind of people like her before, power-hungry, desperate to control everything, and completely incapable of admitting defeat. She had tried legal intimidation, harassment, and outright land theft, and each time she had failed. But now she was getting desperate, and when people like her got desperate, they got dangerous. The shadows in the dark. It started subtly. First, strange cars began parking near his farm at odd hours. Sometimes they just sat there, engines running, watching. Other times they drove by slowly, headlights off, as if surveying the land. Then the drone appeared. Ethan was out in the field checking on the cattle when he heard the soft whir of propellers. He looked up and saw it, a small black drone hovering just above his barn, camera pointed directly at his property. Ethan grabbed his shotgun. Before he could get a clear shot, the drone zipped away. He knew exactly who sent it. Melissa was spying on him. The break-in. Ethan had just started to relax when things took a dangerous turn. One night around midnight, he was jolted awake by the sound of shuffling footsteps outside his house. He grabbed his shotgun and flicked on the porch light. There, just beyond the fence, 3 figures dressed in dark clothing. One was holding a crowbar. The second they saw the light, they bolted. Ethan ran outside, firing a warning shot into the air. The men jumped into a black SUV and sped off into the night. His gut told him this wasn't just random thieves. They weren't here to steal. They were here to destroy. And he had a damn good idea who sent them. The HOA makes their biggest move. Yet the next morning, Ethan found another letter in his mailbox. But this one wasn't from Melissa. It was from a law firm. Walker Farms has been found in violation of multiple county regulations. If compliance is not met within 30 days, legal action will be pursued, including the potential seizure of property for development purposes. Ethan felt his blood go cold. Melissa wasn't just harassing him anymore. She was trying to get his land taken away. And then the worst happened. That same afternoon, the county zoning board sent an inspector. "Mr. Walker, we've received multiple complaints regarding illegal land use. According to our records, portions of your farm may not be correctly zoned for agricultural use." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. "That's a lie." The inspector shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I don't make the rules, but if zoning violations are confirmed, the county can legally reallocate land for other use. It could be rezoned for residential development." Ethan saw it clearly now. Melissa had been pulling strings at the county level. She wasn't just trying to get him fined. She was trying to get his farm condemned and rezoned. If that happened, she could buy it out from under him. She had set this up perfectly. Unless Ethan fought back, hard, he was going to lose everything. The fight back begins. Ethan wasn't about to sit back and let some overgrown HOA dictator steal his land. He called his lawyer. Then he called Sheriff Tom Reed. "Melissa's behind all of this," Ethan said. "She's bribing officials, filing fake complaints, and now she's sending people onto my land in the middle of the night." The sheriff sighed. "I had a feeling this was getting ugly. I'll tell you what, Ethan. Next time someone sets foot on your property without permission, call me first." The war goes public. Ethan knew he couldn't win this fight quietly, so he went loud. He leaked the story to the town newspaper. Local farmer under siege by HOA. Crestwood Estates accused of land theft attempt. The article spread like wildfire. People were outraged. "That HOA is out of control. They think they own the whole damn county. Walker Farms has been here for generations. We won't let them steal it." This isn't just about one farm. It's about standing up to these HOA bullies. Within days, locals started showing up to support Ethan. Some brought signs. Others brought legal advice. Some even volunteered to guard the farm overnight. Melissa Carter had pushed too far, and now the entire town was against her. The final straw, with public pressure mounting, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. Melissa thought she could rally support. Instead, she got blindsided. "Melissa, this has gone too far," said Richard, the HOA president. "You used our funds for a personal vendetta. You broke multiple laws, and now you've put the entire HOA at legal risk." Melissa's face turned pale. "You can't do this." Greg, an older HOA member, crossed his arms. "Oh, we can, and we will." The board voted unanimously to remove Melissa as HOA president. She had lost. Melissa stood there shaking. Her empire had crumbled. And then came the final blow. Ethan walked into the meeting holding a folder. "By the way, Melissa, this is a cease and desist letter. If you or anyone from the HOA so much as steps foot on my land again, you'll be seeing me in court." Melissa stormed out of the room. The next day, her house went up for sale. The day after that, she left town. The HOA never bothered Ethan again. The aftermath. With Melissa gone, things changed fast. Crestwood residents, now free from her rule, actually started shopping at Ethan's farm. The HOA sent Ethan an apology letter. He framed it and hung it next to Melissa's old cease and desist letter. Ethan expanded his farm, turning it into a weekend farmer's market. And just for good measure, he put up a brand new sign at the property line. "Welcome to Walker Farms. No HOA, no Melissas, no problems." It became a town landmark. The twist. Karma hits Melissa. A few months later, Ethan got a phone call from a friend in another county. "Dude, you're gonna love this. Guess who just moved into a new HOA?" Melissa. She had relocated, but she had moved into an HOA even stricter than the one she used to run. She started getting fined for her own stupid rules. Her grass was too high. Her trash cans weren't in the right place. Her mailbox was 2 inches too tall. And best of all, she tried to join the HOA board, only to be shut down immediately. Poetic justice. Ethan leaned back, took a sip of coffee, and smiled. Karma had done exactly what it was supposed to.